Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. In today's episode, in what ended up being a two-parter, me and guest Sam Moores once again rank every NFL starting quarterback from 32 to 1. In part 1, there's one quarterback who falls significantly in Sam's list from a year ago.
He's one of the biggest fallers on my list. He was quite high last year. It's probably harsh after the year he had in 2023.
And Andy has faith in one quarterback winning a Super Bowl. Hope you guys enjoy.
I agree with you. I think he can still win one.
Hello and welcome to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and here today we're doing another installment of our annual quarterback ranking video where we rank every starting quarterback from 32 all the way to 1. Once again, there's a few teams that are going to have quarterback battles. It's up to us to choose which one we think will start in 2025. And this is our fifth year doing it. And once again, we have a returning guest back for today. Once again, doing the quarterback ranking episode is Sam Moores. Sam, how are you? How is life?
Yeah, it's good, mate. It's good, mate. I've just finished university, so I officially got a degree in sports journalism. So right now I'm just waiting for work, which is lovely stuff. But yeah, no, it's good job that it's the off season for the NFL because it's also time my off season as well. So I've been enjoying myself. Really, I've been on holiday. I went to Rome last week, which was great. And yeah, and just catching up on everything I've missed whilst I've been doing all the final year project stuff and everything. It's been a stressful time, but I'm through it now.
That's the main thing, mate. That's the main thing. Remember when I got the same degree as you? It was just such a relief to have it done. Still doing my NTTJ diploma, but I'm only 2 modules away from completing that. But
nice.
No, it's good though. I remember when I think when I first met you, you were going to do a degree in sports journalism. Then you didn't do it. Then you came back and did it a year later. So it seems crazy now that all that time's passed. That actually, since you first came on the podcast, you've actually gone on done a degree. So it just shows the length of time this podcast has been running, but also the time you've been on the podcast as a guest.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a long-standing friendship, which is it's great always to talk to you about stuff because I feel like we have this. Well, other than some quarterbacks, we do have pretty similar opinions about football, which is why I feel like we do get on when we do the podcast quite a lot.
I agree. We've met a few times in person. The main time was not even planned. It was in the Hippodrome Casino in London. Just bumped into you randomly with your dad, and we ended up watching one of the craziest games that I've seen in a while. Actually, that Bengals Packers game where there was about 10,000 missed kicks in that game. I can't remember who won that game now, but I remember watching that game in London. I want to say it was 2021. Maybe it was the Falcons Jets game.
Yeah, it might have been after that one. Yeah.
I remember your dad wearing the Mariota Titans jersey.
He's got some weird jerseys. Dad has. He's also got a Dolphins Jarvis Landry one as well.
That is more possible.
Yeah, no. So just teams you've seen over the years and stuff, but I'm excited for this because it means I can dive in and look at the stats and stuff, which is what I love. I'd love to be a data journalist. I just love looking at numbers and stuff. So I've got some numbers for you. Don't you worry for this podcast.
Love to see. And nice. It goes to show how long we're doing it. This is actually our 4th year doing the quarterback rankings, and I've used the same Word document the entire time. So what I'm going to do at the end of the show, I'm going to go through our first ever quarterback rankings. I've not seen them yet. I've only seen a glimpse at the first 5 or 6 players. And while I've saved it for the episode, I'm going to go through that and just see what kind of quarterbacks we were talking about back in 2022 and where we ranked them. But before we do any of that, let's head to On This Day. Now, on this day, actually, for today's date, there's actually no news that happened ever in history on this day, but there were a few birthdays, and these were Michael Vick, Shannon Sharpe, and Chad Pennington. So, once again, same process. Should go from 32 to 1, and then what I will do as well, we'll also compare how quarterbacks ranked from a year ago as well as how they rank now. A few players that are not on the list from a year ago, include the likes of Kirk Cousins, Will Levis, either Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, depending on which quarterback we choose in the Indianapolis Colts part of the show. Gardner Minshew, Derek Carr, who has retired, and Deshaun Watson. and players not in his list a year ago who are now include the likes of Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Tyler Show, Cam Ward, Sam Darnold, and Michael Penix. Although my spelling was wrong and it spelled a different word on my Mac, which I probably can't say on a podcast. Let's go on to 32. Start from the bottom now. We're here. Sam, I'll let you go first as you're the guest. Who's 32 for you?
My 32 is Spencer Rattler. In New Orleans, I've absolutely no idea who starts, if I'm being completely honest. So there's like honestly about 3 or 4 guys. There you got Tyler Shough, you got Jake Haener. I think easily it's the worst quarterback room in the league, since Derek Carr retiring. But I think that's done New Orleans a favour, because if he was still there, I feel like they wouldn't be in a position to be to select a top quarterback next year. So it's great for them because they've needed a reset for a while. So I've gone Rattler. I just feel like he's got the highest upside, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's Tyler Shough, because he's a 7-year college starter, and obviously they drafted him quite high in the first round. But I mean, look, if you think neither are your future and you want to get a top quarterback, which is what the Saints will do in the future, I think you play Rattler because he's got the highest upside. You try and flip him for some picks next offseason, because so many people I speak to love Spencer Rattler. If he looks half decent, you try and move off him next year, get a pick, and then move on. I'd be shocked if Tyler Shough's a 5-6 year starter in the NFL.
I agree. I mean, I have got Shough as my Saints quarterback, and he's also my 32. Now, I feel like it's such a hard, such a in a worst way possible, a tough one to decide, who's starting quarterback there, because there's no one good. But ESPN is telling me that Tyler Shough is the guy, and I feel like maybe there's some insider knowledge there as to why they're putting him there. I think even if it is Spencer Rattler, I do think that it's either way. I think they may be propelling themselves to a top 3 pick for 2026. For my 31, I'm going for my usual technique of players who haven't played a snap yet. So I'm going for Cameron Ward at 31 and JJ McCarthy at 30. Now McCarthy was actually 30 a year ago, funny enough, in my draft. I did think back then that he would start over Sam Darnold. Obviously, I was massively wrong, because back when we did the episode, he hadn't got injured. And I did think that he'd be starting by week 18. Turns out he didn't. I do feel like in a year's time, he's going to be a lot higher. I have a lot of high hopes for JJ McCarthy. I do feel like one of his biggest things that held him back in the draft coverage was the fact that he was, in a good team. So he's not really going to be, of course he's going to look good in a good team, and, everyone called him a winner. But, he's going to now the situation Sam Darnold had a year ago. He's going to a team with the best receiver in the game, one of the best wide receiver 2s in the league in Jordan Addison. He can hand the ball off to Aaron Jones. He's got a defense that can, win them games if they are struggling on offense. And I think that, he will propel himself to, I think, at least top 20 rankings come this time next year if he starts all 32 games, all 17 games. But I think right now he's not played a single snap, so I can't put him any higher. And same reason I got Cam Ward at 31. Now, I think you can flip a coin between McCarthy and Ward. I think Ward, both of them seem like going to be good players. I think McCarthy's got more of an upside for me. I think Cam Ward was just fortunate that he was in a bad quarterback class. I think a lot of years he wouldn't have been number 1 overall pick. 31 for me, Cam Ward, and 30 for me, JJ McCarthy. Sam, where are you going with your 31 and 30?
So my 31 is Joe Flacco. From what I read from all the beat writers in Cleveland, it sounds like he'll be the guy to start. He's sort of had the majority of the snaps and minicamp and everything last week. I also think he's the smartest pick of the 4 quarterbacks to start as well. I do think we'll see Shedeur Sanders at some point in the season, but absolutely not right away. I think with everything we've learned about him, they're going to make him earn it. Obviously, Flacco is a safe pair of hands, experience, a bit of efficiency as well, and we saw that he could work, to an extent last time he was in Cleveland, obviously leading into the playoffs. But of course, there's better days. He's limited, but I think for where Cleveland are at, you start off with him, and then you hand off probably to Shedeur Sanders at some point when he's earned his chance to start. I think that's what I'll go for. And then 30, again, that's the last sort of real competition for me. I feel Russell Wilson starting for the Giants. He comes in at 30 for me. It makes me so sad just saying that Russell Wilson's the 30th best quarterback in the league. I think it'll be him. Brian Daboll said it's him all along earlier in the offseason. And for Brian Dable's scheme, Russell Wilson is the perfect quarterback for that as well. So it makes a lot of sense. And then I wouldn't be surprised to see both Jameis Winston and Jackson Dart across the year, to be honest with you, but I think we'll start with Wilson. And again, with these two guys, who would have thought that in 2019, Wilson and Flacco, after Flacco had just been benched by the Ravens, they'd be grouped together 6 years later because of how high Wilson was, but how the Almighty have fallen. Yeah, sadly for Russell Wilson, he's just average right now. The arm isn't the same anymore, unfortunately for him, nor are his legs. He was better last year. I think people think he was. He was his best year last year for a couple of years. And he was smart with the football, but unfortunately for him, it just wasn't good enough for a team that are sort of win now in Pittsburgh, and it wasn't good enough for him to stay there. But yeah, sad. But I think Russell Wilson starts with the Giants.
Yeah, sad state of affairs for him. He was 19th on your list last year. It was amazing how far he's declined. There's an amazing photo actually that's come out recently from last season where you had Steelers taking on the Jets, and you had Mike Tomlin hugging Aaron Rodgers. And then with both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson there on their way to either they just hugged him or shook his hand, or they were just about to do it. It's amazing what difference a year makes, and now all three are on different teams. And that leads on to my next two. Now, you mentioned Cleveland. I actually put Kenny Pickett as a starter. Again, I'm going by the ESPN depth chart. I'm trusting that there's some sort of knowledge there. But I think, if I'm honest, if Flacco was the guy I'd pick to start out with the two, I think where he ranks, I think I'd have him probably, to be honest, 26th, 27th, because I feel like I trust him more than some of these guys I've got next. I mean, Kenny Pickett, I've got 29. I've got Justin Fields, 28th. I think he's definitely a stopgap, although we said that about Sam Darnold and that changed there, but I just don't see him changing things in New York. And yeah, Kenny Pickett for me. I think, if we're doing a top 10 of worst ever quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl whilst actually playing in the Super Bowl, I think he's got to be up there because most backup quarterbacks don't see a snap. Now there was, Trent Dilfer is the one. We talked about this actually in a previous episode about the worst kind of players to actually play and how many backups actually stepped on the field, and there aren't many. So Kenny Pickett for me has to be the worst ever winning quarterback of a ring. And then 26, 27 for me is Daniel Jones. I do think he'll win the job in week one over Anthony Richardson. And from what I've read about the injury, who knows how long he'll be out for? And there's every chance with how his career's gone so far in Indianapolis or in the NFL in general. I don't know how many games he'll play this year. And it's a sad state because as a in inverted commas Florida Gators fan, I do want to see him do well. He's the one player that's really actually maybe because I don't really normally watch college football. I don't have the time because I'm watching Premier League or I'm actually trying to have some sort of social life on a weekend, and I don't have time to sit down and watch college football enough. But yeah, for me, he's the one guy that maybe actually want to get up and stay up all night and watch the Gators. Remember, there's one play he made where he sort of, I can't think whether he got tackled. I can't think of the players now, but there was one play he made in particular with the Gators. I think he got tackled and then span and then ran for a touchdown. It was an incredible piece of play, and not see any of that really in the NFL. I know last year I had high hopes on him, but my hopes have dwindled this year. But I do think Daniel Jones has got something. I know he had a bad time with the Giants, but the way he uses his legs, I think that keeps him jobs, and I think his overall professionalism as well. So I do feel like those legs he has can sometimes win you games. I feel like Justin Fields, I've not seen anything yet of him really, apart from the occasional game. I think the best game I've seen him play was against us for the Bears at Soldier Field. Yeah. Overall, it's not been quite the career we thought he'd have. So yeah, that's for me. 29 Pickett, 28 Fields, and 27 Jones. Sam.
Okay, so my 29, I've gone Anthony Richardson. I feel like, again, the injury, he may not start right away, but if I was in Shane Steichen's shoes, I'd want to play Anthony Richardson because you have to see what you've got. You have to get as many games out of him as possible. In fact, he's only played 15 games in 2 years, and it started off really well. The first couple of games, they're using him really well. They're using the way he's with his legs especially, and just around the red zone, he was really good. I thought, I was like, okay, he's not looking that bad. And then he started taking the hits, and then it started getting worse and worse and worse. And last season was meant to be the off season that they could get his throw motion, which was a big thing for him, sorted. But because he's rehabbing, he had to spend the entire off season doing that, so he didn't look great coming into last season. And then this off season he's already got hurt, so his clock's just all completely wrong. I feel like that it had a timeline. It started off really well, and then it's just gone to pot. But I feel like because look, Chris Ballard's probably on the massive hot seat now. Shane Steichen again with him. It's like he's run Richardson into the ground. They have to try and get something out of him to make their investment look good. And I feel like if he's available to start, he will start because of that. I got Justin Fields at 28. Again, there's a bit of a jump up to I went from sort of QB competitions to starting quarterbacks before I think was on the starting job. Very similar QB to Richardson. I think of course he's a better thrower of the football, probably better with his legs too. But the reason why Fields is so low for me is because when Pittsburgh tried to make him more of a traditional quarterback last year, he didn't look very good at all. So I'm fascinated to see what plan the Jets have for him. I like his tools, but I just don't think he's at a level as a passer as the rest of the quarterbacks on the list. And I feel like we're in a good spot for a league for quarterback depth in the league, where Justin Fields is the 28th best quarterback for me. I think there are very few bad quarterbacks, which is good. And then I do 27 and 26 because I've done the same thing as you. I've gone JJ McCarthy 27, Cam Ward 26 because they're just hardly played. I feel like McCarthy is 27 for me. I've got him below Ward because of the two QBs we've seen before. I feel like he's the one I'm least sure about. I'm fascinated to see what he's learned on the sidelines while rehabbing from his meniscus tear last year. Because before getting drafted, he hadn't played much. He hadn't thrown the ball much. If he played football a couple of years starting Michigan, but he hadn't thrown the ball much because of how much they ran the football, played defense. His accuracy and his skills are perfect for kind of Kevin O'Connell's scheme. So I do think he'll be different, but I'm unsure if he'll be able to. I don't think he's got any elite traits, whereas I feel like Cam Ward has got some elite traits. I've loved him since he was at Washington State. He's experienced in a variety of offense. He's had 5 years as a player in college. His arm strength is in an abundance, and his ability if you just watch Miami last year, his ability to perform in a calm manner under pressure, the way to bring them back from behind without panic or anything, it's crazy. It's Mahomes, like the way he'd be able to just switch it on. That's two things: the arm strength and that calm man under pressure. Are two things that I feel like all the best elite quarterbacks have, and that's something that he does have. He does take too long to throw sometimes, and the league is quicker than in college, so he may look a bit rusty straight away. But for me, Cam Ward has got the higher upside of the two, so I've gone for him at 26.
Yeah, it's I mean, you look at the quarterbacks they've had recently. I mean, you think about how well Malik Willis did away from the Titans, and I still have a small amount of faith in Levis could be, a serviceable starter somewhere, but I think that chance may have gone. So there hasn't been a great record really of quarterbacks really ever in my lifetime, because I think if they think back further, I mean, Ryan Tannehill was okay, had probably one or two goodish seasons, one comeback player of the year. Mariota was average at best, and really the last good quarterback they had was probably Vince Young was a flop as well, or bust. Probably Steve McNair was the last good quarterback they've had. I mean, I can't think Fitzpatrick came in for a year or two before my time watching it, but from all intents and purposes, sounds like it wasn't that successful a time there. So really, for all my life, since I started watching NFL properly, they've not had a good quarterback ever.
That's the thing. But unlike all those guys, Ward has got he's got the experience. He's got all the more snaps in college. Normally, the more snaps in college that you have, the better you are going to be in the NFL, because that's normally the way it's been. There's very, very rare opportunities like Josh Allen, for example. I mean, even then he was raw, but there are very, very few. Will Levis was a gamble. Richardson was a gamble. All these players was a gamble. Ward's not a gamble. He's played so much time in college, and again, the way he's been in different offenses. He's seen different defenses. He's played in different conferences. He's seen a lot. As a rookie, because he's been through so much, I feel like that's why I put him ahead of McCarthy, because McCarthy's been in a very very, very unique situation in college. So that's why, for me, I feel like I'm confident we'll be well because of what he's been through. He's been in 3 different spots. He's been in varying levels of opponents. He's in tons of different defenses, and again, he's so good under pressure. It's, for me, that's all you need in a rookie quarterback. That's like the perfect scenario for a rookie. And that's who I spent the number 1 pick on.
You make a good point, because I do feel like the video that came out of Shedeur Sanders with Cam Ward, where he just seemed totally disinterested in all the stuff that Sanders wanted to do and just wanted to focus on football. Seemed like he didn't want to really be at the draft. He just wanted to get in and get out. He just seemed like the model professional, if I'm honest. But I just think, like, if you're giving a guy, I mean, long term, you may look at it, maybe Cam Ward will have a better career. But you think about looking at a guy who, he came in, McCarthy, he had, a winning formula with Harbaugh. I mean, he's coming into one of the best coaches in the league in O'Connell. I mean, you got, like I said before, you got the defense, you got the receiving core. There's not if he's going into. I've seen many quarterbacks go from, like, Alabama quarterbacks, a classic example. They often go from great situations like Alabama, and then they go to a team, a poor team, which is why they're being drafted so highly by this team. And then they go to a team without the weapons, without the defense, without the coaching. But McCarthy got it uniquely. He's actually going into a team that has got a good coaching system, has got a good player. So I think that, that is, I think, it'd be one of the rare exceptions where, a bit like Tom Brady. He was seen as someone who, not Tom Brady. Who am I thinking of? Can't think who it is now. But yeah, McCarthy for me is going into a situation where, he's got everything he needs, and almost one of the perfect situations for a quarterback, I would say. Moving on to my 26, and I'll go 25 as well, because this player's already been mentioned. I'm going 26, I'm going for Michael Penix Jr. At 25, I'm going for Russell Wilson, who goes down 8 from my previous spot a year ago. Penix Jr., it goes down to a small sample size. If I'm honest, I don't think I've seen a lot to be... I think his last few games, he got better, but I don't think I've seen much that I'm going to think, right, he's definitely the guy you're going to pin your future on. This season, he might prove you wrong, and he's only played a handful of games this season. So I think for now, put him at 26. And Russell Wilson, 25. He is aging. He is getting worse. But out of all the ones I mentioned so far, whether it's Penix, Jones, Fields, Pickett, McCarthy, Ward, and Show, maybe except McCarthy, because I got a lot of hope on him. But I just think I would still rather Wilson than all those quarterbacks, because, whilst he is declining, he's still been proven, and he's a great professional. And I feel like, he didn't have a great year at Pittsburgh, but I don't think he was awful by any stretch of imagination. So I think right now, he's not the quarterback he was, but I think right now, I'll still rather him than all the other quarterbacks I've just mentioned a minute ago.
Fascinating. So my 25 is Michael Penix. Again, he played 3-4 games, very limited sample size, but from what he showed at the end of the season, he showed that his arm strength has translated to college. It's way better than people think. Sorry, from college to the pros, it's way better than a lot of people think it is as well. And his movements, again, underrated. His accuracy is probably his biggest weakness, so I'm interested to see how that's fixed. But I feel like that's the one thing you can fix as you get in. But put it this way, like again, it's like Ward. He's had five years or so playing college. I think it's 45 starts. So again, he's seen a lot, and that when you come into the NFL, that's something you can learn on, because you've experienced snaps and stuff, and that's what I like in a rookie. And again, we'll see how he plays this year. But I had enough at the end of last year to say, I think he'll be decent. And he was a better quarterback out of him and Kirk Cousins last year. No doubt about that. And the Falcons got better when he came into the lineup at the end of the year. And then my 24, again, is another really experienced rookie from last year, Bo Nix. He had a pretty decent rookie season, probably second best to Jaden Daniels. I just feel like the other rookies had more upside, which is why Nix is a little bit lower for me. Again, he was a solid quarterback from about week 5 onwards. He was really good. He looked like the average NFL starter of a couple of years in his rookie year, which is great for him. I was actually impressed by Nix's athleticism. He made some smart decisions on when to use his legs, and you can see that in his high EPA score as well, which is big. But nothing about Bo Nix wows me, whereas with Caleb Williams, Drake May, there are things that wow me. So that's why for him, me is at 24.
Fair. I've got Bo Nix a bit higher. This might look like a terrible take to me. I've got Bo Nix a fair bit higher than 25th. I'm interested to see your reaction when you find out where I've put him. 24 for me was my 24. It's Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young had a really, really good second half of the season. I think you think about it feels like that Germany game was a turning point of his season because I remember he got benched at one point. I don't know.
And then he came in because Andy Dalton had a car accident. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have even played. Yeah, it's crazy.
Trying to think at what point he came back. I couldn't remember whether he was benched for the Germany game, whether he was benched the week before and he came back.
No, he was benched in week 2. I've done a piece of this on the full 10 yards website recently. I've done a piece on this, just about how it's remarkable. How the second half of the year is remarkable, and then I feel like this year I've got Bryce Young a lot higher than 24, 25. Just spoiler, but like I feel like he's really poised for a breakout year because of what I saw from him last year. But yeah, no, I think Young is from week 12 onwards, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL last year.
Yeah, he really was, and I feel like the Panthers have got him a new receiver in McMillan. I do feel like it's one of those ones where I think it could have been a lucky few games, could have been just a sort of a magical few games, not magical, but it could have been a good few games, and then that's it. I think we'll see this year, but I have every faith that he's gonna turn things around and and go and do some good things. Now heading on to my 24, I'm going for Caleb Williams. I feel like there were signs. I think there were signs for me that he was going to be the guy. I think if anyone went to that London game, we all know how good he was in that game. It wasn't the season he wanted, but again, it's one of those ones where I'm expecting him to make a jump as well because I think he's now got rid of his old coordinator. He's got a new head coach in Ben Johnson who did wonders at Detroit. And I think that what we'll see is a much happier Caleb Williams. And I think that ultimately we'll see less drama there. And I feel like he's going to just get better and better. And for me right now, based on that rookie year, I can't put him any higher than 24th. Because I feel like, 23rd, my bad. I can't put him any higher than that because he's not done enough to be put higher. I think there is certainly, for me, 3 quarterbacks who were rookies last year that did better. They're all to come later on in this video. But right now, Caleb Williams has got a lot of potential. He was far from the problem last season. And give me him at 23.
Awesome. So my 23 is Geno Smith. He's someone I've always been lower on than others. I feel like he had a solid couple of years in Seattle, but I just don't think he's a franchise guy that can get people in stadiums and get people excited. He's very mid for me. He's a bit Joe Flacco from about 10 years ago, where you're wondering if he's good, but you probably swap him for about half the league, especially if you want to get younger at the position, maybe even more than half the league. And that's exactly what Seattle did this offseason. That being said, I do like his fit in Vegas. So I feel like they could surprise a little bit this year. I feel like the Raiders are kind of talented, and then now they have a competent quarterback, which is something that they've lacked for a couple of years. I can see them actually causing some teams some problems. My 22 is a guy that Smith has been replaced by, Sam Darnold. I feel like he probably is just a better, younger version of Geno Smith, if I'm being honest. But again, other quarterbacks excite me more than Sam Darnold does. I had him in a similar spot last year. I knew he'd start even before McCarthy was injured. I think you were a bit surprised last year by how high I had him, but I'm glad I was right about that because he's always a guy who I think I'd trust to lead an offense and do a good job if there was pieces. I saw in Minnesota, we saw that last year, and I this time last year I said I thought the Vikings could be a playoff team, and you're like, no chance.
I do not remember that at all.
And you talked me out. You talked me out of thinking the Vikings were a playoff team. That would have been amazing. That would have been amazing. Take a year ago, right? If I would have stuck with it from my podcast last year, I didn't. And then towards the end, I was like, if only I would have kept stuck my guns. So I honestly, if you watched back the tape last year, I predicted all this. But he played very well last year. In terms of turnovers, he probably got a little bit lucky. He probably should have had more than he did. But no, I think he's a decent, for me, 22, 23 in the NFL is decent. You stop gaps for a couple of years before you try and move on. I think Geno Smith and Sam Darnold can win a playoff game, for example. That's the level of quarterbacks that I think there are in the NFL right now. And let's see how he fares behind a poor Seattle offensive line. He may, regress a little bit, but I do think he is not great from Geno Smith.
Yeah, see, I fear for the Seahawks because they've given him this money, but he's going to a worse situation. He's going to what he had with all of the teams he had versus the Jets or the Panthers.
Well, no, he's got good receivers. He's got a decent offense. It's just the offensive line what worries me with Seattle.
I just feel like to go from Jefferson and Addison to Cooper Kupp and Smith and Jigba, for me, it just feels like it's a downgrade. And I feel like the coaching is still good. I think McDonald's actually has done it right in his first year, but I do feel like O'Connell's just, I think, a master, especially with the quarterback position. And I don't think he's going to be completely back to his worst self, but I don't think he's going to ever get back to the heights he had with Minnesota with that 14-win season. And I think the way he ended the season when it mattered, he was pretty bad. So I think for me, Sam Darnold, I love seeing it because I think he is, from all accounts, one of the most likable guys in quarterbacks. I mean, Aaron Rodgers talked about him at his press conference, how good of a guy he was. And there was, I remember going to Sam Darnold himself, his post-game press conference in London, and it's just you could tell that everyone was just really happy for him. All the journalists that were Minnesota beat writers were just extremely happy for him. I remember Brandon Marshall came in the room and he did steal the show a little bit in the press conference. He was just, I think, a guy who, I think, did he play them or certainly played it in the same, for a little bit in the same time as Donald Donald. And you could tell from everyone I've seen talk about him how likable he is and how happy everyone was last year that he had this great season with Minnesota. And for me, he should have won Comeback Player of the Year, in my opinion, over Burrow. I think Burrow is more of a comeback player of the year when it comes to the first half of the season compared to the second. But Bengals certainly. But yeah, for me, Donald had an amazing season. But I do feel like we've had these players have these one-off seasons in the past, and it should be a little bit like if Nick Foles hadn't won a Super Bowl. I feel like Sam Darnold had this amazing run, but I don't know whether it can last. I could be proved wrong. I want to be proved wrong because I do like.
I think if you can, so you potentially compare it to like Case Keenum, that kind of Vikings era. I feel like he's a way better quarterback than Case. He was a number, what was it, third overall pick for a reason. Like he has tools. And again, he's been in terrible situations. I feel like, put it this way, right? I don't think Kyle Shanahan would pick up Case Keenum, whereas Kyle Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell picked up Sam Darnold for a reason. Do you know what I mean? Like, so he's very highly respected, and again, we saw last year that he can play it to a high level.
Yeah, I still think that's down to being a good guy more than necessarily a good player. I think his personality is going to give him jobs, I think, in locker rooms. But I don't know. I think that last year they could have given the boost he needs, and maybe next year he'll go back and being the quarterback he was for Minnesota. But the money he's been given, he's got to be good. Otherwise, they're gonna regret that. Now moving on to my 22 and 21, we'll do that at the same time. 22 is Aaron Rodgers, who goes down from 4 from a year before. It wasn't a great year, but he was still, I think, 8th in the league when it comes to touchdowns and yards.
Oh no, he had a good season. He had a good starting quarterback season, and now admittedly everything else that happened made it seem a lot worse. But especially towards the end of the season, Rodgers was actually playing decent football, and for him, he was better last year than he was in his last year in Green Bay, for example.
I agree, and I think there's still a little bit of life left. And I heard a great point made. I can't think who it was. It might have been on. It was on the Extra Point podcast with Fletch Verne and Neil Reynolds, where they were talking about how Brett Favre, who until Rodgers joined the Steelers, he had the exact same trajectory as Rodgers. Favre and Rodgers had the same trajectory as each other, and they made a good point that Favre looked like an old man in New York. Then he comes to Minnesota and has a resurgence. And I think with Rodgers, he's going to from a franchise who is the epitome of a disaster of a franchise to what is the epitome of a stable franchise and a good one. And I think the coaching system there with Tomlin and if he can make Rudolph make the playoffs, then I think you can surely get Aaron Rodgers, at least to a 9-8 season. I think that's probably where they're at, 9-8. I think they may just miss out on the playoffs or may just sneak in. I think that's sort of middle point where it could be just missing in or just getting in. And I feel like Rodgers has some life left in him. I think he has one good year left in him, and I think that's certainly. I did an article on this recently for a touchdown, top 5 comeback player of the year candidates. And I think if Rodgers can sort of have the numbers, I think if he can get him to a 9-8 season and make the playoffs and he has a good season numbers wise, I think he's more than in with a shout of winning comeback player of the year in 2025.
I think he'd have to win a playoff game because the Steelers haven't won a playoff game in so long. I feel like he'd have to win a playoff game to do it. But I agree with you. I feel like everyone will hate it, but I can see the Steelers winning 10 games again because it's what they do. And going into the postseason, now have the best quarterback they've ever had, or certainly since Ben, to win that playoff game again.
I could be wrong here. Don't they vote for it before the season ends?
Well, exactly. Yeah, true. But I'm saying to earn it, to actually feel like it's earned. Like I feel like 9 wins, or maybe they win the division. Then I don't think it's going to happen with the teams in the division. But if they win the division, then I agree with you. But I feel like 9 wins is what the Steelers would have done anyway, even without Aaron Rodgers. So do you know what I mean? I feel like you'd have to have something else.
Yeah, I think you've got DK Metcalf there, you've got Pat Freiermuth. You can hand it off to Jaylen Warren. I mentioned Mike Tomlin before. I think it's just all round a way more stable situation there, and I think for me, I think with the Jets, he had Garrett Wilson and no one else, and he's got DK Metcalf, but he's got more weapons than he would have had at the Jets because who else would they have to throw to apart from Garrett Wilson at the Jets? No one I can think of. So,
Devontae Adams when they traded for him, but I mean, other than that, yeah, and that's the thing. I think Rodgers has to let his ego go for that, and we have 2 massive egos. Obviously, one ego that's respected and one ego that's not really respected in Rodgers. But I feel like you're gonna how Rodgers and Tomlin clash is gonna be fascinating for me. Going into the season because you feel like he's anti-culture and the Steelers probably have the best culture in the entire NFL. So it's how someone who's very me. I want this clashes in works in Pittsburgh was one of the storylines of the season. I think for me,
that's the thing. But Tomlin's not going to take any BS, and
no.
I'm a Rodgers guy. I've always been a Rodgers guy, but I. Not sit here and deny that he hasn't had time at times recently been a bit of a troublemaker. Let's put it that way. And I think but I think he can easily have one good season left. But moving on to my 21, I've got Drake May. Really impressive rookie year. I think there were some limitations at times, but I think there were some games, but where he did struggle. But I think there were plenty of games where he looked really, really good. So for me. Drake May is number 21. Now moving on to you, Sam, for your 21.
My 21 is Drake May as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So whilst Bo Nix had a more productive rookie season, I thought May just has the tools that I really, really like. Especially in a horrendous offensive situation like he had last year as well. He made some plays that really, really impressed me. Top arm strength, good of his legs when needed. He reminds me a bit of Justin Herbert, which is that's my sort of comp for Drake May. And again, with a much better supported cast, much better coaching staff, more importantly as well, I think we'll see a big jump up this year for Drake May. But yeah, again, maybe it's a bit of projection, but he excites me more than Bo Nix and Michael Penix do. And Caleb Williams to me is my number 20, just ahead of Drake May. And again, maybe it's a bit of projection, but for me, I just can't ignore his skill set. And again, he was decent last year. He was careful with the football, just 6 interceptions. He had 24 big time throws as well, which is the 10th most in the league. So it's not like he didn't throw the ball downfield or anything. And that was behind the worst offensive line in the league as well. He was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. Williams does hold on to the ball for a little bit too long for my liking. But I feel like with the better offensive line, with the better weapons he has this year, that should help him take a huge leap for 2025. And as I said, Andy, just a minute ago, his London game against the Jags was brilliant. That's one of the best games for a quarterback all season, let alone a rookie quarterback. So yeah, no, certainly very excited for what Kelly Williams could be with Ben Johnson. And then I'll do my 19 and 18 as well, because I feel like they're in a similar theme, and you've mentioned one of these guys as well. So my number 19 is Trevor Lawrence. I feel like this is the biggest season of his career so far. 19 may be a little bit harsh, but if he doesn't take a step up, the questions are starting to be asked for him, because he's been average since coming into the league. Let's be real. Despite having one of the best draft stocks in recent times, he's now on his third head coach. The pressure is on, and of course, the arm strength's there. Of course, and I also don't doubt his ability to lead an offense, but Lawrence's big issue has been his ability to cope under pressure in the NFL, and that's not changed. Now, admittedly, the Jags have got a bad offensive line, and it's been a bit of a ton of magnet as well. Those two things I'm a little bit worried about, because now he's been paid, it's much harder to build a good team. So it's like if Trevor Lawrence was going to break out, it would have happened now already, because the Jags would have had a better team. The Jags aren't going to have a better team than they did a couple of years ago in the World Playoff game. So, I'm a little bit worried about Trevor Lawrence in that aspect. And then my number 18 is Aaron Rodgers. And again, as we said earlier, he's I feel like he's in a weird spot. I'm not saying last year was back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers, but even like in like a highly dysfunctional team at the age of 40, he was PFF's 13th best passer in the league. He was smart at the football as always, and going into a well-run organization, I feel like Rodgers' stock is probably a bit higher than it was last year, which is good as well.
You mentioned the draft, and I know we had our quiz question answer revealed in the last episode, which was the most sold jersey in the UK and Ireland since the draft. We're doing our next quiz question, which will be released in our top 10 worst ever Super Bowl winning head coaches. And this question is, so the NFL on Fox theme tune was partially inspired by which superhero film? Let us know in the comments what your answers are. We will put out some questions, the question I should say, on social, so we will put a quiz question out there. So do put your answers in there as well, and we'll reveal that in the next episode. Going through some of mine, I mentioned Drake May. 20 for me is Lawrence, and the next two have been mentioned as well by you, Sam. Lawrence, to me, I do think, like a lot of quarterbacks so far I've mentioned, I do think he could be set for a good year, because I think what Liam Cohen did with Baker Mayfield, I think you could see him do with Trevor Lawrence. He's got a new weapon in Travis Hunter. Although the signs so far in training camp haven't been great, but there were players that did that.
For me, again, it's just for him to be better. I feel like you need to get the offensive line better, and the Jags have ignored that for so long. That's why I'm like, is he ever going to take that? Because their offensive line's getting older, I
just think that. I think you can't call him a bust, because he's had some good moments. He's
not a bust. He's just average. He's like an average NFL starting quarterback. That's what he's been. And it's just everyone expected him to be so good, and that's the difference, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. My number 19 is Geno Smith. I do think it's a match made in heaven for him and Pete Carroll. I think the Raiders are just unlucky they're going to be in a good division, because I can see legitimately all four of these teams making the playoffs, particularly over the Chiefs. And I think the Chargers and Broncos, for me, have every chance of making the playoff, particularly the Chargers. I think the Raiders with Ashton Jeanty now there, Brock Bowers already there, Smith playing with a coach who got and comeback player of the year. One great season in the league came under Pete Carroll. I think what they got with Carroll is good head coaching, which they've not had seemingly in a long time. So I think, Geno Smith, I think, will have a good year. I know we'll go on to our predictions near the season starting, but I do think that Geno Smith, for me, will have a good season. But I don't know whether they'll be enough to make the playoffs. But certainly, I think
they'll cause teams problems. The Raiders will, because they did that anyway. With a better quarterback, I feel like they can cause teams problems. Like, for example, I can see them beating the Chiefs. I can see them beating the Broncos. I can see them beating the Chargers. I feel like they'll make those games very interesting when previously they've been harder to beat.
I agree. And the number 18 for me is Sam Darnold. I think that he's got every chance to prove everyone wrong and have another good year. But right now, that season was really good. I know the last 2 games were pretty bad, but for me, yeah, I'm going to put him at number 18. Number 17 for me is Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. I feel like, he had a somewhat good year. I think 21 passing touchdowns. I don't think that many interceptions from memory. And Kyler Murray, for me, I don't think he's the guy who's going to take you to win a Super Bowl, but I don't think for any point he is as bad as everyone thinks he is. I think he is a good quarterback, just above average, I would say. But for me, I think that, I think his passing did improve a little bit last year, but there's still some limitations. I think it's, I don't think it's a particularly great offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. had his moments, but I think he has a lot to prove. Still got 8 touchdowns. So I think he's going to get better. I think that will help Kyler Murray ultimately. Shane McBride is getting better each year. So I think he's got the guys around him now. But I just don't know whether he is going to do enough to mean this time next year when we're doing it again that he's going to be top 10 or anything like that. But I think he could go easy as far as 14-13 with a good season, unless he wins MVP, which I don't see happening. But I don't think he's going to be bad at all by any stretch of imagination in 2025.
Yeah, so my number 17 is Dak Prescott. He's one of the biggest fallers on my list. He was quite high last year. It's probably harsh after the year he had in 2023. But before he got hurt last year, he struggled big time. It just was, he was averaging the worst PFF grade of his career before going down in week 9. So again, the football like Dak played before last year, before going down, wasn't great. And on his day, we saw that in 2023, he is top. I had him as a potential MVP candidate in 2023. He played that well. But there are days when you watch Dak where you question the amount of money he's made across his career, because there are some things that make you wonder why is he doing that? Why is he getting paid? Why has he been made the highest paid quarterback in the NFL twice, and he's still not an elite guy. It's good in his day. He's very hit and miss. In 2022 he led the league in interceptions, and in 2023 he had an all-pro level year, the best of his career. And then last year he started the next year badly. He started on pace for the worst year of his career after just being an all-pro level. He's very and that's weeks after signing a record-breaking contract. It's like, I truly don't know what Dak Prescott is. Maybe he is just the best of a bunch of quarterbacks who just excel when everything is good around them, like sort of Sam Darnold. Maybe he's just another level to that side of quarterback. But for me, he's nothing more because he is so up and down. And then my number 16 is someone that you mentioned, Bryce Young, and I spoke about it earlier on. I feel like I did a piece on this on the 410 Yards website. Go check out. It's a 1,500-word statistical read about Bryce Young and how he had a brilliant end to last season. Between their loss to Kansas City in Week 12 and their season close in Atlanta, he had more big-time throws than any other quarterback in the NFL with 22. He was PFF's best passer from Week 12 onwards too. He was really, really good, Bryce Young. I feel like he's poised for breakout season this year, based on how he played under Dave Canales at the end of last year. For me. And then my number 15 is Kyler Murray. And again, I feel the same about you. I feel like he's a decent quarterback. He's always around the top 10, 15 every time he plays, and in many metrics as well. That's where he is. But yeah, if it was that no one really rates him, it feels like the Cardinals can move on from him. That's what I've been hearing rumors. For me, he's at the worst, the least there. Whereas I think he's decent. He's probably one of the most talented players on that Cardinals roster. He's on a decent contract as well. He was a top 10 quarterback according to PFF last year. In the grades, despite having, look, he has decent players, but his set of weapons is still bottom half of the NFL. And the offensive line again is improving, but it's not for example, it's not Justin Herbert's offensive line, it's not Jared Goff's offensive line from last year. Like the offensive line is nowhere near that level as well. So I feel like Kyler's done an all right job. Again, I can see Kyler Murray winning a playoff game, but I don't know if I can see him winning a Super Bowl. I think that's where these kind of guys I am at with. I really like Kyler Murray, but for me, he's mid of the road because of how good a depth is at the quarterback position. Because there aren't many superstars. Obviously there's not many Brady, Rodgers, Roethlisberger, Rivers. That era had so many stars. There's only 3 or 4 stars. This kind of era of the NFL. But there's below that, it's so hard. You're sort of 7th to 20th. I feel like honestly, you can make a case of most people being up and down. Like, it's a very subjective thing because there are 20 to 25 real starting quarterbacks in the NFL now, when there wasn't 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, that is fair. I mean, he goes at 1 place from your spot last year. He was in 17th. Yeah. 2 spots from last year. And just to go back on some of the other picks, Aaron Rodgers was down 13 from your 2024 selection.
And Dak's down loads.
Yeah, he's down by 7. And Bryce Young is up by 14 from 2024.
Yeah.
It shows kind of start he's had.
How good he was. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, looking at my similar sort of thing, my 16th position is someone that is up by 15 places from the year before, and that is the aforementioned Bo Nix. I really like what I saw from Bo Nix. What I really liked was sort of how not only was he able to use his legs and extend plays when he need to, but at times I don't think he's almost like Mahomes. I don't think he's like a Lamar Jackson where he can just run a million miles an hour, but I think he uses his feet at the right time. I thought at times he was really good at getting the ball out quickly and getting to his man, and then I think at times I was really impressed with his accuracy. But I'm looking at as well, if you look at his last few games, I mean, how well he improved. I mean, his first 3 starts, he had 0 touchdowns and 4 picks. But then as the season went on, he had a game in late October, which seemed to change his whole season against the Panthers. I mean, who didn't beat the Panthers last year at times? But he had 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. And then fast forward to mid-November against the Falcons, he had 4 touchdowns, 0 picks. And then he had 3 straight games in amongst that with 0 picks.
He had 5 touchdowns in the game against the Panthers, the last game of the season as well, if you include rushing touchdowns.
He
had a rushing touchdown as well.
No, that might think of the same game because I got it here. I wanted to get.
No, there's one at the end of the season, the last game of the season.
Says they played the Chiefs on the last game of the season. Bo Nix.
Oh no, sorry, ignore me. Yeah, but yeah, no, he was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs game. I actually want to just put an asterisk on that because the Chiefs are playing their backups. But you think about lost the Chargers. He had 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Shaky game against the Colts, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks. Then against the Bengals in overtime, he had 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Could probably do is cutting down on the interceptions. He had 12 in 2024, but I think gotten back to the playoffs for the first time since they won the Super Bowl. I think with Sean Payton there, he's got a brilliant head coach who knows how to get quarterbacks going. For me, 16th is Bo Nix. Now, my 15th and 14th are basically the same quarterback for me personally. I might have said this last year. I think they're exactly the same quarterback, but in different conferences. I've gone for 15th and 14th, Tua in 15th, Dak in 14th. And the simple fact is, Dak's won a playoff game. That's the only reason why I'm putting him above Tua. I think they're literally the exact same quarterback. They only win when they're at home and the conditions are in their favour. When you put them in conditions where they're not comfortable, they, don't perform. But then they get the numbers and the stats and makes people think they're better than they are. Sorry, Dolphins fans. I know I get a lot of stick for my anti-Tua rant, but I just think, Tua can't stay healthy. Dak has had issues staying healthy as well. I think Tua for me, I really wanted to do well. Same with Dak. They're both likable people. I do think the Cowboys may surprise people, maybe not be as bad as everyone thinks. I think they're taking a risk on the new head coach. I think, it could be, if he's anything like his dad, then, it's going to be hopefully a good appointment. And they've got a new guy to throw to in Pickens. Not sure on his character, but either way, I do feel like with Dak, I think he's stronger. I think he's got a better arm.
History tells you that he'll have a really good year this year. He'll get paid again, and then have a terrible year next year. That's what history tells you about Dak Prescott.
That is actually, I never thought of that way. That's actually a really good point. But yeah, no, Dak 15th, Dak 14th for me, and then someone 13th for me, taking a bit of a nosedive, 4 places down, is Brock Purdy, a guy I've always been high on. I still think that he is a guy that can be good. I've seen him in big playoff moments do the business against the Packers and the Lions. And I think, he had a bit of a downturn in 2024, but every quarterback has a down year. He's going to have McCaffrey back. He's lost a lot of players, and now a lot of players reaching farther time in their careers. But I think Juwan Jennings it is really underrated, and I think Ricky Pearsall could be set for a good year now with Deebo Samuel out the door.
Ricky Pearsall, second year as well, like this.
Yeah, so for me, I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback, but I think I can't disclose and turn down how bad it was for the Lions and Purdy in particular in 2024. But putting him in 13th. Sam, You on to your number 14 and 13 yourself?
Yeah, my number 14 is Jordan Love. It was a bit disappointing last year after what we saw at the end of 2023, and I think that might be a little bit towards this. But look, everyone had Love in the Packers going very deep in the NFC last year, and that just wasn't the case. Their passing offense really wasn't great at all last year. Like, he was average. He was 18th in PFF grades, 13th in terms of EPA per dropback. We saw the more inconsistent guy that we saw at the start of 2023 rather than the composed pocket passer we saw at the end of that season where they went on the run and beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. Obviously, the receiver room last year he had and all the injuries and everything, he wasn't exactly blessed. Same with the offensive line. So I'm holding out hope now that they've improved those two areas that he'll have a good year this year. Now that Green Bay have finally invested in those positions. But yeah, for Love, I was disappointed last year because he sort of fell back into where he was at the start of 2023, unfortunately. And my number 13 is Brock Purdy, same as you. Where's number 13? He's my number 13. He's one of my favourite quarterbacks to watch, and it might be because I've done a lot of work with flag football teams and stuff, and so I really like flag, and the way Brock Purdy plays is how you watch a flag quarterback play, which is, he's very smooth. He's strange. He's not really elite at anything, but he's so good at so many things. He's accurate. He can put touch on the ball. He has great vision. The way Brock Purdy can move around is crazy. Like the way the plays he makes with his legs are up there in the NFL. Obviously the Niners weren't great last year, and he got hurt obviously too. But when healthy, Purdy actually played quite well. When you look at the numbers, it's a shame the team were terrible. His offensive line were terrible. Weapons getting injured all the time. But when you look at, for example, Purdy actually often put the team on his back and succeeded. He was the 5th highest EPA per play among quarterbacks with over 100 snaps. And that's because he made so many plays with his legs, escaping that very, very bad Niners offensive line. For me personally, stop saying he's a system quarterback and all that. Last year he put the team on his back. He played very well. He deserves the money. His numbers from last year are pretty good, and his team was bad. I look forward to him being very good when his team is a bit better this year. I like Brock Purdy. Everyone from here onwards I really like, and I feel like could win a Super Bowl. I feel like Brock Purdy can win a Super Bowl. That's it. That's my piece.
I agree with you. I think he can still win one. I think as long as Shanahan is there, whilst I do question if he can win a big game, I think at some point you give him another 2 Super Bowl appearances, Kyle Shanahan, I think he'll win one of those games. Unless he is.
I had that until I watched him last year with a bad team, putting a team on his back, and now I see it like, he can do that, because I feel like when everything's breaking down again, his numbers last year were really good when everything was terrible. The Niners aren't probably going to be in that situation again because of how bad, how well run they are. I doubt they're going to have a bad offensive line that bad again.
No, I agree. I think their schedule as well is pretty favourable. We did mention it as well in our Star Bench trade episode with Ollie Kent last time out about how I think the schedule is really in their favour, and I think that could help them win some games.